So many of us women feel the pressure to get married, have kids, have the career before it's, let's say, too late. But Tamron, you didn't. You got married, had a kid, and started your own talk show, all at the age of 48 years old. So how on earth did you make sure not to settle and not give up on less than you knew you deserved?
It was not by design. You know, it wasn't by design. The things that happened at age 48, my son, my talk show, were all events that I didn't plan, but life prepared me for them. I lost my dream job as co-host of this national morning show that really came to me as a great surprise. I was on air, about to go live, and my then agent said, they're making a change and they're taking this show off to replace it with another person in another show. And they've made you an offer to stay, but you will only have a title. We don't know what you'll do. We don't know where you will fall in, but for now, you'll keep the title of host of this show. First of all, I thought I was gonna black out. I was just like, wait a minute, I've never not had a job. And then my mind immediately went to a passage that I read in a book when I was in my late teens, and it said, who are you if there's no title beneath your name? If it's just your name, who are you? And that flashed in my mind, and I wrote back, I'll pass. And it was a text. I could hear my agent's pause. You know, he's like, wait a minute, wait. I said, I'm good, I'll pass. Tell them I'll pass. I don't remember the rest of the show that hour. I was on live and it's a blur. And I went home and I went into my meditation prayer closet and I emerged completely clear that I was going to determine my next steps. So that wasn't a plan, it was something that happened. So many other women that I know have found the forward because there's no way to go back. I mean, I love the visual of your back is against the wall. If there's nothing behind you, boom, boom, I can only go forward.
I don't know though, because a lot of people crumble. Because here's the thing, I love what you're saying. Okay.
I did, but you gotta get back up. You crumble, I crumbled. I was in such pain and shock, I couldn't cry. Have you ever been so hurt that tears can't find their way out because you're so tight and you're so in shock? I was in such shock, I couldn't cry. Like, I could not cry because I could not believe that this was happening. You crumble, who's gonna sweep you up? Even if a cookie falls to the ground, somebody's gotta get it up. And so for me, I crumbled, but I was my backup plan. I wasn't married at the time. I don't have affluent parents. Even though I'd been in TV for a very long time, I never made what I was due, like so many other women in the business. And so there was no backup plan. I was going to stay on the floor and have my landlord remove me from an apartment I could no longer pay for or figure it out. And so it really, I would love to tell you this glorious story of courage, but it really was a moment of when your back is against the wall and when you recognize that no title makes you. Nothing beneath my name made me. I made me. The universe made me. God made me. And the people who believed in me and nourished me made me. So this title was not going to break me. I was compelled to bet on myself. And I think that's the part that I try to explain to other women. I truly felt an overwhelming from my toes to the top of my head. I was compelled to finally bet on myself, not bet on a company, not bet on a title, not bet on a job, not bet on a bank account, bet on myself. And that's, I think, what got me up.
And one of the things that I think is knowing that you are your own hero. And I think
you are. Now that I believe, your hero is traced to your origin story, right? And I grew up always knowing that I'm an underdog. My mom was an underdog, right? No one's gonna come in and save us. we had to figure it out. My mother had to figure it out. So if I am my own hero, how did I figure it out in that moment? It really was my origin story. One of my first memories as a kid was going to visit my mom. She worked at a leather factory while trying to get her education, and then at night she'd decorate cakes at a grocery store. And I watched her become her own hero. No one was going to save her. And I had a great father. My stepdad came into our life. I think I was like I said, 11 years old. He's the dad that God meant for me to have. So combined with his presence and his kindness and an amazing nature, I was able to look at two people who were the heroes in their own stories. And I don't think we always know why, right? That's the thing about life. It's not always like, okay, I'm going through this. And I remember that one time my aunt told me that story. That's exactly what I'm experiencing today. And I'm going to kick it in. Or I remember that self-help book that I got in and I remember page 6 of Maya Angelou saying, it doesn't happen like that. But I do believe it's like your brain is a computer and these things are stored. And if you walk in or go into a situation with that desire to learn, I believe it stores in your hard drive.
And that's why I'm obsessed with the stuff that's in the middle, and I call it the mess.
Yeah.
Because it's the mess that actually allows you to then show up. Because a lot of people will see the ending, right? They see the peak of the iceberg, but it's the entire foundation that allows the peak to show. So when I think about what's the underneath the water, right? What's underneath the water for you in that moment where you're told you've worked hard, you show up, you crush it every day, and then they're like, yeah, sorry, we're taking you off the air. Most people, unfortunately, will either go, cool, I'll take whatever you can give me, or they really do crumble. Their self-esteem plummets, they lose their confidence, and now they don't believe in themselves anymore, and they don't get back up. So that's why I'm always thinking about, what does that mess look like in the moment where you're notified to the moment where you then show up again?
Yeah. First, I was pissed off. I was super pissed off. I mean, come on. I'm not going to lie and say that I wasn't. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And not because of who they chose, a little bit of that, but mostly it was, wait, I work hard. I did the work. The ratings were great. It doesn't match up, right? Because we're told if you get in there and you perform at the expectation, if the, ratings are the barometer, all of these things were where they were supposed to be. And it ends up like this. So when I say I was pissed off, actually wasn't at them. I had that moment of like, life? Really? And that's an interesting feeling too, that I wasn't necessarily mad at the individuals. I was mad at life, because this is not how it's supposed to go, life. I'm 48. I've worked since I was 14. I've worked my tail off. I've never called in sick. I've done everything that they tell you you're supposed to be. And now I'm in my apartment alone, thinking, wait, what's next? But it really was, okay, girl, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And I got on the phone with my agent at the time, and I said, okay, I have 2 dresses there and a picture of my mom. I want my stuff because I bought them. And they said, she can't come back in the building. And I said, I don't want to come back in the building. And I'll tell you this, and this is the truth, that was probably the stinging part, because I didn't do anything, and that I wouldn't be able to say goodbye, right? Which was shocking, that I was just vanishing.
Yeah, and they were almost treating you like a bit of a criminal.
Like I'd done something wrong. So you can't pick up your things, and you can't go on air to say goodbye to the audience. And at that moment, I said to myself, if I let them weigh down my wings, I can't fly. And what are they afraid of? What are they afraid of? And I recognized that they were afraid that I am good and that I was going to rise up from this. But how? They knew I wasn't, going to go out and do some story. I can't, that's not my nature. I said, they're afraid I'm good. And I am.
That's super powerful. I'd read places where it's like they didn't want you to have short hair because they said that looking like that isn't going to be successful on camera. They had said there's a story where they tell you to take, you took your jacket off because you were in Texas and it was in the 100-degree heat, and they're telling you to put your jacket back on.
And these were all different places, different people, different places. You know, it wasn't the Today Show. This was local news in Texas, and this guy who's no longer even in the business, and it's 100 degrees, and he says, you got to put your jacket back on because you won't be taken seriously. Or when I started out, you know, nationally in cable news and being made to feel like my short hair said something about me being lazy, or, you know, every kind of thing you can imagine. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Yeah, all those things I'd encountered. When I lost the gig at the Today Show, it gave me clarity on what my next chapter would be. And my next chapter, I had a couple of rules. I said, I will never be in an office begging for a contract again. I will never be in a position where I am making my case to the point of desperation, because I remember going in saying, wait, look at my ratings, look at what I did, and I did, and you have someone on the other side going, and it doesn't matter to them. And I did not like that feeling. So I was not going to be anywhere and in any situation. There's different than being on an interview and saying, here's what I bring to the table, or dating even, here's what I bring to the table, right? There's another one where you're like, oh my God, here's what I'm not doing that again. So that was one of the rules, not begging for a contract from anybody, not gonna be white knuckling it, not gonna go in there pleading for anything. If you can't collaborate with me and see me, then I'm okay with you not seeing me.
How did you come up with the list? If anyone's listening right now, because that's really powerful to have like these non-negotiables.
Well, I sat down and I said, you know, we're going back. The plan was not a plan, but the reaction to it becomes the plan, right? So my reaction to what was happening is, okay, now we know the score. You're not going back. The first thing I said in the plan was, and it just came to me very spontaneous. So I said, what do people talk about the most? My clothes. Okay, boom, game on. I called my friend and said, this is before like everyone was all on social media as much as they are. I said, film me packing up my clothes because I'm giving it all away. I need to shed it. I need to shed it. I'll get more clothes, that's fine. This organization called Housing Works, I've donated privately to them for years, but I said, while you have the light, shine it on somebody else. So that was a part of coping with it as well. And everyone started calling me the next morning because I slept very well that night. That's the other thing. The night that it all went down, I went to bed because I was at peace. And that's what you have to find in these moments. You have to find that peace. I've had many sleepless nights over different things, but not that night. I went to bed that night because I knew I was on the righteous side. I knew I had not done anything wrong. And I knew I wasn't the only person that ever lost a job. I knew I wasn't the only person that ever worried about the what's next. But I knew I was in control of what was next, even though I felt helpless, which is weird. So I went to bed, got up the next day. I made a video. And I said, I'm donating my clothes to Housing Works. And I love it because the CEO of Housing Works said he was in the air flying and he landed and everyone was like, where are Tamron Hall's clothes? Everybody wanted. And I was like, boom, game on. And that was a part of the list. Okay, when you have power, what is power? It's when you can open the door for other people. So now I've got the strategy. I'm gonna use the light, which is power, to open the door for other people. And then I'm gonna figure out what is the next step. I knew that I'd done 7 shows on 5 different networks. MSNBC, the Today Show. I hosted a reunion show called Sister Wives. I've done it all. And each audience was very different. My crime show. Then I looked at my advocacy work with survivors of domestic violence, and I recognized that there were so many different people who knew me from all different walks of life. So if you're the tree and these are your branches, how do you fertilize them so that there are leaves and it is plentiful? I'm gonna look at each of those groups and decide why they like what I do. I'm gonna bring it to one space, and it was a show. And it's just learning what your natural weapons are, those natural things about you that allow you to walk through life. It can be cooking, it can be compassion, it can be the ability to have people open up to you, like you. You know, we have it, everybody has it, you do.
I love that thought process. And then, so I assume then once you've done that, then that final piece is Now that I realize I've got all these branches, I realize how I'm going to fertilize it. Is part of then the fertilization seeing what you don't want to fertilize the tree with? And that's where you're saying, okay, I'm no longer going to accept this.
Right. And when I get my show, it is going to be an inspirational, positive show. It's going to be a conversation. All those things just came into being. I didn't want, there were people who wanted me to do like a hot topic show. And I'm like, that's cool for some people. That's not me. I wanted to bring a conversation, the kind of shows that I watched growing up, the traditional daytime talk show. I'm using my story, my weapons, which is my life, to try and help other people. And then offers start coming in, but they are shockingly below the work that I'd done. Because again, I'm a 48-year-old woman, and traditionally, we're supposed to ride off in the sunset, right? This is not the beginning, this is the end. So I started getting, offers that were wonderful for someone just starting out, but not someone who'd been an Edward R. Murrow winner, which is the highest journalism award, someone who achieved what I achieve. And I don't mean in compensation, I'm just saying like in value, right? Like, gosh, I'm really good, and you want me to do like a 3-second overnight in the middle of the night, like, here's what's happening in the news. And that's not a bad gig, but for what I'd accomplished in 30 years of journalism. So the offers started to reflect again the misogyny, also, honestly, the reality of my business, which is oftentimes when you turn on a major news platform, there's one Black woman, maybe two, and there's a limit. Right? There's a limit on women. You'll have a whole ensemble cast of men, but before The View, there were no shows with all women.
That's so true.
And so those things exist in society and they exist in my business. So now I'm like, wow, what happens next? And then we get a call saying, Harvey Weinstein wants to executive produce your show. Wow, Harvey Weinstein, the Harvey Weinstein? I don't know him, but I know they mentioned him at the Oscars. He's a really big deal. He wants to do my show. What? I go in to meet with Harvey Weinstein and my team with me, and he's got this whole thing laid out of, this is the Tamron Hall show. And I'm like, what? He gets it. He's showing clips. He's showing the exact show that I'd envisioned in my head, the weapons and the different people, all the stuff I've been saying in my head that I'm thinking, wait, I'm not just talking to myself. This guy gets it. Wait, what? 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, he's being charged with what? Life, I'm so pissed at you again. How are you doing this to me? How is this possible? That I've dug myself out of this. And now this is happening. And not only is it happening, people are calling me and asking, did something happen to you? What? And now I'm being asked about somebody else's horrible sins that have nothing to do with me. Jeez. Maybe I should have stayed, taking, and I did have that moment, like, wait, but was that ego? Should I have taken it? Wait, whoa, hey. All of these emotions go through. And it was probably the only time I really, and I get misty now, because it's probably the first time I was crying, like, wait a minute, what have I done wrong here? And then I opened an email that had been sitting in my inbox that somehow I missed. And it's when I tell this story, I recognize it is going to sound like a made-for-TV movie, and it happened. It was an email that I had missed from Prince.
Prince?
Yes.
Wow.
And it said, why are you waiting on other people? You can do it yourself. Because he had, long before the Today Show booted me, and I say that funny now because it sounds funny. He said, why are you waiting do your own show? What are you waiting for? And I was like, wait, what? This is good. And he was always like watching the show and finding things. And he's like, you're not being yourself and you have so much more to offer and blah, 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 blah. And it was an ongoing conversation. Anyone who knows Prince knows it was like an ongoing conversation. And well after he'd passed away, there was this email that I missed. Crazy. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And by then I was in a relationship with Steven, and I'm like, what? And like, whoa. And it was just, again, a reminder. And this was sent before all of that stuff had happened. I just missed it. But when I needed it, it was there.
What an amazing story.
True.
And I love the transparency, by the way, about how when you make a change, right? Or whether it's a forced change, so they fire you, you then go, cool, I'm not gonna succumb to this. I'm gonna go off and do it. You've got the energy, you've got the drive, you've got the confidence, and then something happens that becomes even worse. To your point.
Worse. It was like, what? It's the worst.
And now all people I'm sure want to talk to you about is the Harvey Weinstein.
100%.
And you're just like, hang on a minute, that isn't who I am.
Yeah.
They've now linked you to something that actually isn't accurate. And that self-doubt that happens then becomes another moment where I think we then start to quiet ourselves. We start to turn the volume down on who we are. Because we're worried about, oh my God, have I made a mistake?
Yes. What will people think? Whoa, wow, the judgment seeps back in, and all of it. I mean, it was absolutely insane. One of the things that I do, Lisa, and I think it's because I was raised by my mom and so many great women, I have always been able to clearly understand it's not just me. I do shows on people who feel alone, right? And that's why I do it, because I do know so many people who feel alone. That's why people suffer in silence on many levels, right? One of the things that I think has allowed me to find my core and my center is I have rarely felt this was only happening to me, right? So if it's misogyny, if it's negativity, I've encountered people, they're really harsh to you, and you think, oh gosh, they don't like me. And I always say, I bet I'm not alone. And that's not to not be accountable for things and feelings, but I have, maybe through my job, interviewed so many people that when I tell people you're not alone, I mean it. And so in that moment, I also had to think that, right? I'm not the only person who's been fired. I'm not the only person who doesn't have a backup plan. I'm not the only person who's been shocked by life and dealt cards that I feel are pretty messed up. I'm not the only person, but I am the only person who can figure my life out. That's the difference.
Building your confidence isn't easy, but let me tell you, it's freaking hard when your hair is falling out, when your hormones are changing. Look, I know you guys are used to seeing me with braids, but right now I don't have them in because my hair is legitimately falling out. I just got clumps of hair in my hand in the shower the other day. And so in order for me to not succumb to feeling badly about myself, I'm making sure that I'm taking my bean minerals right here and putting them in my morning coffee every single day so that I can get the nutrients I need. Here we go, Mum. In my Wonder Woman mug, because it does matter, guys. I'm having those every single morning in order to prevent my hair from still falling out, and then also giving it the nutrients it needs in order so that it can grow back. So that's what I'm doing. And guys, if you want to give Beam a shot, click the link below. I'm telling you, you will not regret it. It is my go-to thing right now as my hormones are changing and I need the nutrients I need. You won't freaking regret it.
And I think this journey of being a journalist for 30 years gave me that perspective. And that's what I want to share with other people. I have interviewed for 30 years people from all walks of life, from the most successful, if we're measuring that through money, to the most successful if you're measuring it through life and experience. And I am sitting on this couch because I've been given that view of life that affirms what we all know, but we don't always believe. You are not alone.
And what's the narrative you tell yourself then at 48 when a lot of people would think like, oh, well, maybe it's time to retire, or maybe I just need to take something enough to pay the bills in order to retire. You go, you have the beautiful freaking audacity, homie, to go, you know what? I'm going to have my own show and I'm going to call it my name. And I'm not only going to have my show, I'm not only going to call it my name, I'm going to be the executive producer on it.
Well, listen, I mean, it's true. I was offered millions to stay. but I knew I could make that money. And and if I couldn't, I was gonna be okay too. I did. I really knew it. I didn't. It didn't feel right to me. My mother has a saying, all money isn't good money. And I knew it. I was like, this isn't good money. I'm not taking it. And I figured, okay, I've been doing this a long time. I can figure it out. I jokingly said one day, I better hit the gym so I can end up on old lady night at the strip club. That was before OnlyFans. I was like, but nobody wants to see that. But I knew, and I wasn't going to be in a position where I couldn't look at myself. One of the exercises that I have, and I did it that Tuesday, which I know the day of the week that's all the way down on. I find my 7-year-old self. I will go in the mirror and I will stare in the mirror, not at this. I am looking for her because she is a tough cookie. She had nothing. She was with a single mom. My school clothes came from a factory because my aunt worked at the factory and she got a discount. So each year we'd go on the friends and family discount at the factory. I'd get 5 pair of pants and 5 shirts. And this is Dickies work pants. It's cool now. It wasn't cool in 19, whatever year that was, right? And that's what I had to go to school with. My grandfather lived in a house where you stand in the front of the house and you could see straight through the house. They call it shotgun shacks in the South. So that's the kid who then went on to get accepted in a gifted and talented program, went on to play a clarinet when no one in my family had ever played an instrument, and got first chair when my father was so proud of me with my little clarinet in my hand, who went to college 1,528 miles driving. Were it not for that little kid, I wouldn't be where I was that day, which was still ready to bet on myself. Because if she can come out of that, and there are kids who come out of far worse, but my experience is my experience, then I'm gonna be okay.
I think that really is the final key, is that you just have to decide to bet on yourself.
Yes.
And the idea of no one's coming to save you.
No one.
I think a lot of the stories we've been told when we were younger, especially as women, especially at our age, it was, the era of Disney, and it was, the princess gets saved by the prince. And so how did you not get trapped in that idea and wait until you were 48 to get married? Because a lot of us, I think, find ourselves in a position where we either feel like we need to be saved. We need someone. And typically as a woman, unfortunately, we do turn to looking to find a man that can come and save us.
So growing up, there weren't a lot of princess movies where the Black girl was being saved by somebody.
That's so true.
And so I didn't grow up with that image of someone was going to come in and save me. Now, granted, my father came in our lives when we were 10 and things changed tremendously. He had been very successful in the military, owned real estate, he was great. But I never saw my mom positioned as being saved. I saw him compliment her, but he didn't save us. And she was never gonna let him think that, because someone who saves you, at least from that point of view, can take it away. And so I was raised in a culture of, you can do bad by yourself. My mom used to say, listen, when you're partnered up, the electricity bill goes up, the water bill goes up, the food bill goes up, everything goes up. So if someone is coming in your life and they are not adding to not just the finances of it, but the emotional growth that you need, the support you need, then you can do bad by yourself. So it's quite the opposite of this. And that's just so funny. It's the first time I've ever had this conversation publicly that me and my friends have all the time, especially young women around my age or women around my age of color who were a part of that first wave of very independent, strong women going to college and having your own worth and own self first. I was never waiting on someone to save me.
Wow. I never even considered that. So thank you. That's so powerful. And to your point of how it's the opposite.
Yeah, it is. It was never on TV. I mean, you can't, all of our iconic, figures were these women who seemingly did it in spite of, not because of the help of a man.
Well, then help me then figure out how you on earth then you handle it, because that's so powerful. Now with that mindset and that way of your foundation, let's say, when you go and you've been taught this by your mom and it's like, no, you're a strong woman. You don't need a man to come and save you. And so you show up like that. How do you then handle when people turn around and call you difficult?
That was the challenge. So all of these things, stand up for yourself. Don't, I grew up with, right? I grew up with women who cleaned houses for a living, but you weren't going to yell at them. You were not going to put them down, right? And my mom was working in a factory. If her boss, disrespected her, she was going to walk out that door. And by the way, many of the women were the same way. I think that's where the world gets in your ear. So now I've been positioned with understanding that wealth doesn't make you confident. Wealth doesn't determine anything other than, if you can pay your bills on time every month. And that's a great thing. So don't think that I'm over here saying that's not a great thing. It is. But it doesn't determine your whole journey. And going into the work world for the first time and suddenly encountering, wow, you can be treated like this and it's okay, or the misogyny that exists in the work world and all industries, I then start to experience one time in work. And then the world tells you, you have to shrink down. That didn't come from my home. That didn't come from any of the women who raised me. And now I go out into corporate world and it's not just women of color, women in general, your place, even in the news industry. That's the irony of the industry. We would report on said company in trouble for, whatever actions in the workplace. And it was existing in our industry too. So you imagine how out of body that is. You're talking about other industries, but it's happening in your own. So for me, it was the world. And so the society says, wait a minute, you're 38 and you're not married. You're 36, wait, what? And so around 35, I think, I'll be very honest, that's the first time and maybe the most significant time that I felt the weight of society's expectation of me is at age and women and marriage. And I was in a relationship with someone, and it was not a good relationship. There's a person who was verbally abusive, just not nice to me. I feel that he felt insecure about my success, and I was very successful at the time. I was in Chicago. He'd had his own personal childhood trauma and struggles, and I became the recipient of that through verbal just nastiness or not celebrating the things that I was doing, or just, anything, all the time. And I was afraid to end the relationship because I didn't want to have another failed relationship. And I had, great relationships and fun relationships and guys who, propose. I've been engaged, I think, like 5 times, somewhere like that.
Wow.
But each time I knew I wasn't going to go through with it, but I didn't know how to say no to someone in front of you on a Michigan Avenue bridge proposing. You're like, oh God, what am I gonna do? But yeah, I did. And then when I was in my 30s, like I said, I found myself in this relationship and it was really bad. And I hated myself for being in it.
Why did you hate yourself for being
Because
in
I
it?
knew I wasn't supposed to be in it. But I was afraid to tell other people that I didn't want to be with this guy. I'd introduced him to my friends and we'd gone on trips with my friends, and now I would have to say again, it didn't work out. And we know the line becomes, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with her? And I think I even had people say, well, did you ever wonder if it's you? And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Is it me? Like, yes, personal accountability in relationships, but I didn't want to be married. So there wasn't anything wrong with me. I wanted to date. I wanted to go on a vacation or 2. I wanted to pursue my career. And I knew that everyone else was going to be second while I was pursuing this career. I never said it out loud, but I knew it in my mind. And I also knew that I didn't want a child until I was ready to be in a committed relationship. So it wasn't so complex to me. I knew it. I'm working. I had to be up at 3:30 in the morning. And I also recognized that my mother, who's a phenomenal mom and a phenomenal grandma, was 2,000 miles away. So I had no support system to help me with my child, all of these things that are real conversations. I wasn't a career woman per se, and I don't even know what that means. I was just a woman doing what I love. And what I loved required me to get up at 3:30 in the morning. And so now I'm in this relationship with this person who, when I met him, of course, I was like, oh my God, this is dreamy. And then it turned bad, really bad. And then my sister was murdered. And I went home and we learned that it was likely the result of domestic violence. And I called that person, and we were living together. I called my friend first and I said, can you go to my home and can you go to the driveway? And he's going to come down with the key. And my friend's like, oh boy, really? And I said, if you don't want to do it, I totally understand. My friend said, no. And I said, and then now when I look back at it now, I probably shouldn't have done it that way because you never know someone's reaction. But at the time I was taking a stand. Yeah. And I called my friend waited. I called the individual and I said, this is over. And my friend is downstairs. If you could take the key down and get your things as quickly as possible, there's nothing else here for us. And that was it.
Obviously, I know that you can't necessarily answer this with accuracy, but the fact that it took obviously your sister to have died for you to recognize the severity of the relationship that you were in and how bad that can be, do you think you would have stayed if that hadn't have happened to your sister?
Maybe a little longer. I don't think forever, but I don't know. And it wasn't because I thought he was going to take the verbal to physical. I knew that I was not supposed to be in that situation. I knew it wasn't healthy. And I knew that the fear of people thinking something was wrong with me and why am I not married was nothing. It was in my head. Even if their words were real, and even if their opinions were real, and even if their thoughts were real, then they can let it live in their heads. It is not going to live in my head. And so I, at that moment, again, decided to bet on myself and not let my story be created or written by anyone else but me. And I asked him to leave, and I ran into him years later, just briefly, and hi, whatever, but, and I've never told anybody this story in this detail. My friends know, of course, but nothing publicly, and so he'll probably watch this and go, I think she's talking about me. But, I refrain from even sometimes talking about that side of my life because I recognize why he was where he was, mentally and emotionally. And I think for me, when I look at the scope of my dating life, which really significantly probably started at 18 years old, that doesn't mean anything's wrong with him or wrong with me. It's the time and the trauma of life, if left undealt with, will always manifest itself. And his manifests in the way it did, and my fear and trauma of somehow being judged, right? Because I'm the kid who's judged for not having a dad in the home. I'm the kid who's judged for a 19-year-old single mom, the kid who felt judged for her little Dickies pants. And so this avoidance of judgment led me to stay far longer in something that was completely and wholly unhealthy. And so going back even to the career, by the time I get fired at 48, I think I had done enough of work and understanding that the fear of judgment was not going to hold me back. And so the judgment of being fired, the judgment of she must have deserved it, or did she do something, or maybe she wasn't good, or whatever it was, okay. I wasn't gonna live with that.
Wow, that's really powerful to think that so much of the pivots that you've made in your life, where you've really just like, who am I? Who do I want to show up to be? All comes from that idea of just the judgment.
Yeah.
And once you recognize that, then it really can become a mechanism for you to just shift your mindset and how you show up. And asking yourself, well, what's more important, the judgment of others or fill in the blank,
Yeah.
or this abusive relationship, or a career where people don't value me and they actually want to step on me in order to get the way up the ladder. That's a really powerful way to think about it. And that's where I'm always trying to grasp it. Like, what's that thing that in that moment, you said it earlier, it's like in the moment of emotional turmoil, it's not like you're like, I'm going to remember, like that Tamron said to do this, but it becomes a mechanism and way to think.
It's like, you know what? It's almost as if life is this fire drill. Okay, when I grew up in Texas, we do tornado drills. When you're a kid in Texas, we have our desk, and they used to take us out in the hallway, and you'd learn how to cover in case there was a tornado, or you'd get under your desk and learn it. So you have tornado drill, almost like a fire drill, right? You do the drills in hopes of being able to react when that crisis happens. Life is a series of drills, right? You don't know when the crisis is going to happen. But if you're paying attention to the fire drills of life, the breakups and how you handle it, the first thing you really wanted that you didn't get, how you handled it. My niece recently was auditioning to be a cheerleader, and her friend got on and she didn't. And she was jealous. And I said, that's a fair feeling. Now you go to school tomorrow and congratulate her. Fight past that jealousy, fight past that. I mean, I know you're gonna look at her and you're gonna probably wanna throw up because you wish it was you, but you go in and you cheer her on. That's a fire drill for something else down the line. Because there will be another time you're tempted to be envious, tempted to covet something someone else has accomplished or had, and it's gonna take you away from what you are meant to have. That's a drill. And so many times in life, I tell myself, this is a drill, this is only a drill. But when the moment happens, that you have to say, am I gonna take this money and not be able to live with myself? Am I gonna take this position just because I'm afraid to say, I am now Tamron Hall, not Tamron Hall from this show? That's the emergency. And so all of these fire drills, all of these tornado drills that I experienced in life, hopefully, somehow, through watching my mother clearly, and other women in my life that I admire and respect, I was paying attention to the drill. So then when the emergency happened, I was ready.
It's such a powerful way to think, like fire drills. And in those moments to just remind yourself, oh, this is just a drill, actually really does kind of disconnect that internal depths of despair that you may feel. And then it propels you to actually think about a different perspective. Oh, how can I use this in future? Yeah. So I love that.
And like, it is. And so some people call it like future tripping. I don't future trip necessarily. I think we all do to some degree, but it is this part of me, it's preparing me. I mean, I just glanced over at my cookbook, and I know we're talking about many things, and this is not a plug. This is truly, my dad died in 2008, the dad that I was meant to have. He did all of the cooking my entire life. I remember, laughing, saying, I didn't know women could cook until I went to college in the cafeteria. I was like, what the women cook? Because my mom was like, I do not cook. My husband cooks for me. And then when my dad died, suddenly, right around the holidays, which he loved, my dad was the guy he not only cooked, he baked. And so there was a spread as big as this room, and everyone was welcome to our home. And suddenly we go from this joyous home of food and family and friends to just me and my mom and literally nothing in the refrigerator. And I thought, what can I do? I'm gonna learn to cook. And a year from now, I'm gonna cook a family dinner. I'm going to cook a family dinner. And my friends, got me in some kind of class, and they told me to try the Barefoot Contessa, Ina Garten, this phenomenal chef and cook, and great story, and I started practicing. But it became more than learning recipes. It became being confident in the kitchen. God gave me this great dad, and now he's gone. And the lesson, though, that I've learned from him, and the lessons, right, putting them into action in life. And that was one of the lessons, the love of family, love of home, love of friends, and love of just sitting down and being. So it was more than a journey of cooking. It was a journey of what's important in life. With nothing beneath your name, that title is Tamron. That's my name, but the title, if you will, that can never be taken away is daughter, friend, person who's rooting for you, sister. You can never take those things away from me. And that became a part of this journey. So it's interesting, all of these moments of life, these fire drills, and when you get to the emergency, losing your dad, what are you prepared to do and how are you prepared to react?
So yeah, if you don't mind actually now, I'd really like to focus on, so you meet Stephen and then you find yourself on an aeroplane and you bump into your ex-boyfriend.
Yes, I did.
And he's with?
A Russian model.
Okay. So
Need I say more? Need I say more?
All right, so I really want to talk about this as well because we end up, I think women and just other people, we think, oh, if you've got the confidence in one area, then you're amazing and perfect in others. Yeah. It doesn't always work like that. You can feel like a freaking badass in your career and then actually not be able to necessarily be strong or set boundaries or really show up. And so things like potentially jealousy, you get triggered, your ego gets triggered. Now you compare yourself again. We end up making decisions that don't serve us long term.
Right.
And so I love that you're honest about that. So how did you then handle it? And then talk to me about starting and when you first dated your husband.
Well, you know what? It was so crazy. I had to find the humor in it, right? So that's the other thing, right? In life, you can armor up for the challenge, or you can sometimes find the humor in it, right? And so I'm thinking, I have not seen this man. He is there. She's beautiful, right? Because in all of our minds, when we run into an ex, they are with like a person who looks like a Ninja Turtle. She did not.
And they look terrible too.
Right. Yeah, he's like gone down, and he's with a Ninja Turtle. And no, he looked great, and she looked beautiful. And I'm like, okay. So you have to find the funniness in it, right? You have to find the humor in it. And I definitely did. And I don't know how, but I did. And then I saw Stephen getting off the plane, and he was always chatting me up. I'm like, okay, you're gonna be my decoy right now. And he's not a bad looking guy, so I'm like, okay. So I strike up a conversation with him, and we're walking, and he's like, yeah, so, you know, you're gonna go out and party tonight? And I'm like, no. And I'm just kind of like not really listening to him, because I'm like, just stay here with me and we're gonna have the baggage claim. And then Stephen is chatting me up, and he's like, well, I've called you a couple of times. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember, blah, blah, blah. And we go about our way, because my car got there by then. I was like, whew, yeah. I didn't think much about it. And I did, because now I'm not employed by this point, right? Because I just lost the gig. So it was like a week after I lost the gig, I'd come here to go to Clive Davis's Grammy party, but also just, okay, maybe I'll date. I don't know, you know, but I don't know, it was all over the place. I stayed at a hotel, and I went to the pool, and I was sitting there. Jennifer Aniston, I read a quote once, and she said, you have to throw yourself a proper pity party and then get over it. I was in my room, and I said, I'm gonna throw myself a proper pity party. I left the room, I'm skipping past the part of the story that I can tell because it's legal now. I never smoked marijuana, not because I'm some kind of puritanical person, but I was like, I don't have a job. My friend had given me, and I was like, yes. It's like, great.
That was part of your pity
party.
That was my pity
party. So I smoke, and I'm like full on Snoop Dogg and out this hotel. It's great. Oh my gosh. I leave, I go to the pool, and I'm sitting there and just chilling out, just kind of thinking about the irony of running into the guy and just life. And this guy walks over, and he goes, what are the odds? I'm like, it's Stephen. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he sat down, and I was in my swimsuit, and he sat on my lounger, like really close. And I remember slowly grabbing my cover up, and he's looking at me, and I said, I'm so sorry, I just converted to Islam, and I'm not, I totally lied. I said I'd converted to Islam, and I needed to cover my body. It must have been what I smoked earlier that day, and he will verify the story. I slip into my cover up, and then we started talking, and he said something about pizza. And I said, I know the best pizza place in New York. And he said, no, I do. And we happened to, as it turned out, live 3 blocks from each other in Tribeca. I thought he lived in LA this whole time. He said, no, I just moved to New York. I live on this street. And I'm like, wait a minute, I live on that street. Okay, done, pizza date. And we agreed to go on a pizza date. Shake hands, okay, whatever. And I'm feeling him or whatever. And I remember him saying, so do you ever want kids? And I said, I think that ship has sailed or something to that effect. And he said, well, you never know. We could go practice now. And I'm like, what? And no, he's going to hate that I told this story, but it's true. And I said,
he's got game.
Well, yeah, if that's what you want to call it. He's like in a hotel lobby asking somebody.
Well, it clearly worked.
It worked, right? And I said, not tonight, but thanks, And then I went on about my way, and I had some work that I was doing and working on. But soon after, well, that night he did call and he said, hey, would you like to go out for a drink? And I said, no. I'm at that time I was doing a lot of, I'm the executive producer of my show, and people really, I think early on thought that was just a vanity title. But in truth, in those days and weeks, I was sketching out what the set would look like, down to how close I wanted the chairs. I would watch old episodes of not just Oprah, and people always assume it's Oprah, and of course she is the Mount Rushmore, or just she is the mountaintop. But I studied, Dick Cavett, Dinah Shore, Mike Douglas. I went through the archives of everything you could imagine in television and tried to study what makes a good conversation. I studied Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, not to copy them, but trying to figure out what makes a good conversation. I studied, televangelists. I studied, you wouldn't believe, and I was like very, very detailed. I studied fashion archives about, what does the power of fashion, and that's why our fashion is so prominent in the storyline of the show. Because going back to Dolly Parton, I love a lot of what Dolly talks about, but she talked about early on in her career, recognizing that she was gonna have this big look, and once she got your attention, were you gonna hear her and see her? Gaga did a similar thing where they came out with these big, outrageous looks to grab your attention. And so I knew that, I'm not an international star. I was a journalist, and not the biggest name journalist. And now I have this talk show. So how am I gonna get your attention? And so I looked and studied from the fashion on about how to grab the attention. And then once I have your eyes, how am I gonna keep you? So that night I was doing a lot of work, and I was like, dude, I'm in this. I gotta win this game. And when I got back to the city, he said, okay, let's go get the pizza. And then he won, because his pizza place was fantastic.
That's amazing.
It was fantastic.
What I love about that story, there's so many actually gems in that story, but number one, when I think about people dating right now, so I think a lot of people do think by the time they get to 35, and I've heard you say this, it's like, well, is this it for me?
Yeah.
Is it over? So the idea that it's never too late. Number two, I like the idea, in all truthful and honesty, that I think dating apps are screwing us up a lot, because I would have swiped by my husband.
I would have swiped by my husband.
Yeah, if I'd read all that, he likes rock music. Well, forget it. I'm a hip hop fan.
Yeah.
He, is born in Tacoma, Washington, and is never christened. Well, I'm Greek Orthodox and was born in England. So when the idea of you even then just leaving yourself open enough to be able to find those common similarities, I think is super powerful.
I was able to see him. There's an Anthony Hamilton song. It says, can you see me? Can you feel me? Am I getting through to you? And I think it is allowing people to get through to you and seeing them, right? And I think that at that time in my life with the show, in the works, but me having been fired, when I got fired, it was the longest I've ever been without a job in my life. I have since 14 worked. I would not, prior to Steven, I wouldn't take a vacation longer than 5 days, ever. And our second date, he said, let's go away somewhere. You have the time? And I said, I do. And he said, well, we're gonna go away. I'm not gonna tell you where. And I'm gonna just you have to take a passport. We're gonna go 7 days. And at first I'm like, I don't let people take me anywhere that I don't know I'm going. Have you seen, I host a crime show. So there's that.
Yes, so true.
And then second, I was like, I never go away longer than 5 days. I was wired to, I've gone to Europe and gone to 3 countries in 5 days and came back. I'm like, I just never took those long vacations. And I was like, you know what? Let me take a picture of your driver's license. Let me send it to my friends, and I'm gonna do it. Let me just do it.
I like how the backup and the
Yeah.
honesty of it.
Oh, yeah.
So what was it then that allowed you to go from what you had said earlier in this interview, where you said, look, I was brought up to be independent.
Yeah.
I was brought up that you create your own path and that you don't need a man.
Yeah.
how did you allow yourself then to actually navigate going 48 years where you're your own woman, you're super independent, and I'm not saying that being married doesn't mean you're independent, but then to allow a guy to come into your life and be a part of it. Because I think, again, a lot of people, especially who've been scarred in the past, fear that giving themselves over to another relationship.
One of the things I never did, and this is, we dedicate a few of our shows to dating. I know I never allowed the idea of dating being hard. I never accepted that because, it is, but so is being single. So is getting up in the morning. So I don't embrace that, even in my work ethic. You know, I had a conversation with someone recently, a young girl who gets great advice, I hope, from me. But I said to her, I don't know a job that's not hard. If you own the job, it's hard. If you work for someone, it's hard. If you wake up in the morning, it's hard. If you have the second shift, it's hard. It's what do you get out of it, right? And it doesn't always, and it's not always some big altruistic or big moment. Sometimes what you get out of it is the ability to take care of your family or take care of yourself. And then that job pays for experiences. You know, my first vacation ever, me and my friends were like 16 of us in a room in Mexico. Sounds like a great time, I know. But, you know, it's what does that job provide you as far as opportunity or whatever it is, maybe sometimes outside of the confines of the war. I think there should always be a pride in what you do. But if you are going to work just to get the pat on the back or just the check or whatever those things are, that job is going to turn into a bad experience for you. There has to be a point of pride of what you do. I watched my grandfather be a barbecue guy in the back of a grocery store. And that was pride for him. He took pride in his job, and that was validating that he could go home with that paycheck and take care of his 10 kids. And so for me, I never embraced that dating was hard. I sometimes felt like connections are hard, and that's hard in friendships and in anything, right? A connection is tough sometimes. But with Stephen, I'm not saying he's not incredibly special, because he is, and he roots for me in this beautiful way, and he gives me great advice and great perspective. But if it wasn't going to be Stephen, it was going to be somebody. I mean, I wasn't on I want to be on this alone track. I think what was so appealing about our love is it was consistent at a time that things were so all over the place for me. He greatly understood what I was going through, and he rooted for me. And, you know, when things were flaring up all over the place, he'd say, don't put a 20 on a 10. It's not a big deal. You know, he gave me that great perspective. And I think that allowed this love to be different for me. Because I've had other relationships where people rooted for me and I loved them and we had great times. But at this very important time in my life, the universe conspired to give me the person I needed to complement this journey. And I hope that he feels the same about me.
If you continue to ignore your well-being, it will actually stop you from showing up with freaking confidence in your career, in your relationship, and in your life. So instead, take freaking control of your health journey with Joy Women's Wellness. With a simple blood draw, you get a super in-depth functional health report that you and your clinician will use to come up with a game plan for how to manage your symptoms and reach your health goals. With Joy, it's actually possible to balance your hormones, get your energy back, improve your mood, and start sleeping throughout the night again. So click the link below, guys, to run over to Joy to get your levels checked right now. And if you use my coupon code NYBBS, which is Nurture Your Bad Bitch Soul, they are actually giving you a 20% discount so that you can get started right now. That's choosejoy.co and use my coupon code NYBBS to save 20% off right now. Build your confidence by taking your health seriously. I love that so much. And there was the same type of their mentality when once you fell in love and you got married, or that you were starting then IVF, because that's the other thing. How many people were telling you, and you said it earlier, right? Like, oh no, you're too old to be a mom.
You know what the great part of that is? I didn't tell anybody.
Oh.
Because it was important for me to protect and that's the other thing, right? Protecting your spirit, your peace, your joy, right? So when I was creating the show, I would talk about it in meetings where I was pitching the show, But I wasn't running around telling everybody because I didn't need you to tell me the 100 other way more famous people whose shows didn't make it. And that doesn't mean I was afraid of my dream or embarrassed, but it's like The Alchemist. I needed to start mixing, and I needed to make this work. I didn't need the judgment, and I didn't need the validation. I didn't need it from anybody. I needed to save me. I needed to be my own hero in my story. And so I wasn't going around polling the audience. Once I knew, then I'd say, you think this pillow versus that pillow? But the intention of it, the goal, the dream, that's mine. And I didn't have to share it with anybody. And I didn't. And so once the show became clear in my mind, then I started to ask people, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? But this dream is mine. And then with the IVF journey, I called a dear colleague, former colleague, Savannah Guthrie, who's one of the few people that knew, and I asked her about a doctor. And she said, this person's phenomenal. And I don't even know if she went through IVF or not. I just knew she was a later to the party parent, as I call us. And I, with Stephen, called my mom. I tell my mom everything. I didn't tell my mom. I went on my own because this was my journey. This was Stephen's journey. And we went in and we, because by then people knew me and they would sneak me in the back, and I was going to get blood work once a week in the mornings. And, it's very early in the morning because they got to test your levels and all of these things. And they would sneak me in, and these amazing team of people, it was very covert. And I was 32 weeks pregnant before I revealed. And the only reason I revealed it is that a tabloid learned that I was pregnant. And I think they learned because we were like now booking the hospital on it. So now more people, the group is expanding from the core that it was. And they called and said, we know she's pregnant. They call my PR person, and my PR person goes, oh my God, they know. And I just hosted an event the night before, and I was like, oh, okay. So that Baby Shark song had gone on in my head forever. And I knew at some point I'd have to tell, and I wanted to control it. So I told Stephen to play that Baby Shark song, and I put on a white dress that I tried on like 60 times. And I was like, okay, hit it. Baby Shark. And then everybody was like, ah! And it was like, went to the next level, and people were calling.
Oh, I love that. And every part of your story, everything, Carl, from your career to your marriage to your child, there really is an element of you going internally first, stating the fact, proceeding, and then almost opening yourself up to the world. And I think a lot of people do the opposite because we want to get the approval first. And the problem with that is we then listen to other people's opinions and we make decisions, or we act in a way that actually isn't in alignment with who we want to be and what we truly want. And so even in that story with the IVF, there's a beautiful part of the fact that you were just so strong in your own convictions that you didn't need the outside to weigh in.
No, I didn't. I didn't even know I was considered geriatric. I mean, I have a picture
Is that literally what they call you at that age?
They call you geriatric pregnancy. I was like, wait, what? And I didn't even realize 48 was so considered high risk until People magazine was like, Tamron 48, a miracle baby. And also, we were trending the next day. People were like, oh my God, there were celebrities calling, people calling. But you know what? I'll tell you, from the baby to the show, the words that I embrace were the overwhelming number of people, men and women, who said both journeys offered them hope. And it was beautiful to hear. And I hold on to those people who, gosh, strangers that I walked into, and they were like, you've given me hope. And it wasn't a straight line. We had rounds that did not work. And I was at my last point. And I was also terrified, not because of what people would say, but my own health and the health of the child and all these things. I actually looked at a picture just before I came in. My team was asking me for a photo of something. And I ran across, I think it was a day or two before Moses was born, I had to go through a rigorous testing, a heartbeat test. It was terrifying. And I looked at this picture of myself, and I looked terrified that I'd carried this child for 30 plus weeks, and now I'm in this heartbeat thing, and it's like, oh my gosh. And it brought back a flood of memories and fear, honestly. But I think, Lisa, I think the reason why people enjoy what you do in this conversation is that daily we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to find a way to make it make sense, right? We're trying to find that common thread in life, which is most people, I believe, are good people. I think most people have their dreams and they just want those dreams to come true. And when given the chance, they would help other people have their dreams come true. The messiness of life happens. And you think you have a talk show on your way, and then a Harvey Weinstein says, let's do it. And someone calls you from a publication saying the R word, and you say retirement. They go, no, wait, what? You know, it's the messiness and the trauma and the complexities of life that determine whether or not you can get up off the ground.
Girl, I could keep going and talking to you for ages. Thank you so much. Where can people find you and all the the endless, incredible things that you're doing, including your amazing cookbook?
They can find me on my talk show, which you were amazing guest on. They can find me right here talking to you. You can buy the book wherever books are sold. You know, the cookbook is the latest example truly of giving yourself the opportunity to own your dream and giving yourself an opportunity to determine what it is. I have 73 recipes in here, and they're delicious, but the secret sauce is the story. This book is me saying, yet again, I'm gonna keep telling you, and I keep telling myself, you can determine this journey. It's not perfect, but no one can tell you what you can't do. You tell me I couldn't cook a few years ago, I would have said maybe. But guess what? I stuck to it, I studied it, I did it. 73 recipes and a book full of stories that I hope inspires people to never limit yourself.
If you want to learn the love lessons that you wish you knew sooner, then fear not, just click here right now. Often when we're single, we have a voice in our head that make us feel like maybe you're never going to find anybody better than the person that you're with or the person that you last dated. And